Hello there, people and listeners of the Hungry podcast. Today, I am beyond excited to welcome Huib von Brakel to the podcast. Huib is the founder of Tenzing. They're an natural energy drinks brand who have absolutely charged onto the UK market, taking Redbull and Monster Energy, taking those guys on. They've won distribution points at Selfridges, Whole Foods, Holland Barrett, Tesco Boots, Sainsbury's Co-op, Morrison's and Asda. I mean, the list is literally longer than my arm. Prior to Tenzing, Huib had a glistening career as the head of marketing at Redbull, and head of TV, MTV Creative. He was also the founder of Finkelbaum, which was a high street socks brand, I think. Mm-hmm. I'm super excited to have you on today, Huib, partly because Tenzing genuinely did fuel Money-Life's growth through 2019, 2020. I mean, Stu was literally addicted to them. He wouldn't stop glugging them back. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Brilliant. Well, really cool to be here. And exactly, I had the same with the Money-Life. It was like a big part of the office was filled with the tubs.
Really? When did you first kind of get involved with that? When did you first try Money-Life?
I think was it through Rosa? Do you know Rosa?
Yeah, Rosa. Yeah, she's a good friend. Yeah, really good friend.
Yeah, so she actually introduced me to the brand, and I love it because I'm a big, peanut butter fan. And,
amazing.
So I think they always taste great.
In terms of like the first place I want to start is I was doing a lot of kind of research over the weekend ahead of this, and there's so many kind of avenues we can go down. And the theme that really struck a chord with me was like father, like son. So, I mean, your father was ex-marketing director at Unilever, and then obviously Tenzing was the first, or one of the first guys to climb Mount Everest. And I was reading an article in the Well-to-Do Global, I think. I don't know if you remember this. Mm-hmm. And it basically says that before launching the brand, is you wanted to go over and meet Jamling, who was Tenzing's son. And you hiked the first part of Everest together. And I just thought this is absolutely glorious. And could you kind of, just for listeners, just to set the scene, like explain what it was like on that walk with Jamling? Like, what were you guys, I don't know, talking about, I suppose, and what was it like?
Yeah, so there's a moment that is really the most vivid moment, and the cool thing is there's actually a picture of that, which is my favorite picture. It's like a black and white picture. If you Google me, that's one of the ones that comes up, where I'm actually having Tenzing tea with Jamling Tenzing, the Sherpa tea, where kind of Tenzing was, the drink was based on. So that was like a nearly kind of beautiful moment, and it was just lovely talking about his dad. We didn't talk about my dad too much, actually, but it was actually funny enough. The interesting bit is that my dad was a huge fan of Sherpa Tenzing, because obviously I wasn't born yet when Sherpa Tenzing was the first man on Mount Everest with Edmund Hillary. He was in 1953, but my dad would have been 11 at the time, so for him it was like a very vivid moment. And he always loved the Sherpa Tenzing story of, he was a yak herder with nothing, but just this passionate dream to be on top of the world, to be on that mountain, and he made it happen. That is just so incredible against all odds, because at that moment, all the guys that were trying to do it were basically the Swiss and the English, and they were always kind of like well off, posh type people that didn't have anything to do, and then thought, let's conquer these mountains, right? Mm-hmm. And he would just kind of manage to somehow just start at the bottom as well, and be a Sherpa and help people up to growing in that role. And when they climbed it, that's a very often misrepresented. He wasn't some help. He was a fellow climber. He was like an official climber, and he climbed it together with Edmund Hillary. That was just the strongest team, because actually they tried to send 2 Brits up, because it was a British expedition, but those guys didn't make it. It's a long story, but it's a beautiful story, because one of them did want to go, the other one thought he didn't want to go, so they were devastated. Imagine being literally those 2 names no one's heard of now. You realize that then at that moment, I think. So they came back, and then John Hunt was his name. Colonel Hunt, I think his name was. He was the expedition leader, and he then sent his 2 strongest climbers, which was Edmund Hillary, a New Zealander, and Sherpa Tenzing up, and they made it. It's actually kind of a good example of entrepreneurship, you could also say it's about grit and adventure and going where no man has gone before, because at the end of the day, millions of companies have been started and have gone or been successful, but not that specific one, right, that you're launching or that I'm launching. So it's their own journey, but at the same time there is an element of luck involved, which was very much also the case with them, being there at the right time, and those two guys not making it and then them making it. So it's an amazing story, and that's obviously I loved hearing all those stories directly from Jumling, his son, who climbed Everest himself. Actually, in 1996, he climbed it with one of the when the movie Everest and also the book Everest, Into Thin Air. I don't know if you ever read Into Thin Air.
No, I haven't. No.
That were the most horrible, where a lot of people don't make it, and he was actually on that expedition. He was the expedition afterwards. He went up afterwards. So he's an amazing man himself, Jumling, a very accomplished climber, and and he's that kind of partner in the business now.
Oh, really? Because that's what I was going to say. Is again kind of in the prep for this, and even just drinking it. That arrow, like it is entrepreneurship and climbing a mountain are they're inextricably intertwined. It's the two, and I love that analogy. I generally do think because you bosh back a Tenzing, it doesn't give you the jittery. You kind of gives you that thing just to keep going that little bit more.
Exactly.
And that is so interesting. And do you think kind of is it that analogy, or is there one lesson? Because I'm trying to think about what a listener could take from this who's a new startup brand who may be at the bottom of the mountain. Like, what would you say is the lesson to pass to them from either Jumling or his fun?
The most. That's why it's such an historic. I think he made it the 7th time. So Sherpa Tenzing, it was the 7th time that he tried. He nearly made it with the Swiss expedition. So he was like let's say, if you could make it really funny, I've never thought of it this way. He was country agnostic. I love that word, agnostic. Always sounds very expensive word for
big word. Yeah, love it.
I'll do whatever I want. But so he didn't really mind. He just wanted to get on top of the Mount Everest. But it's just determination. And I think he was that's also a good analogy, I always thought, because I don't know if you see pictures of Sherpa Tenzing, he was a very charismatic guy, like the best smile. And if you read stories about him, and if you talk to his son, he was very charismatic, and his charisma got him chosen. So because they would literally, the English and the Swiss would literally line up potential Sherpas that they would want to take on their expedition, and they would choose, and they would probably be a massive language barrier. So you would choose on literally how strong someone would look and how pleasant, I guess, or how charismatic. That's how it went back in the day, which is kind of strange if you think about it. Not very normal or accepted in these days. But he was actually chosen on his charisma, but then later, of course, made it and was chosen again and again because of his experience and because of his sheer skill. And I think that is actually, I've always thought that's a great analogy, because when you go into a supermarket or you try to get a listing for your product, it really is down to do they like you as well, right? Do they think you're nice, and do you have that kind of charisma, and are you friendly, and do you smile, and and all that kind of simple stuff. But then afterwards, if your product doesn't perform and if your brand doesn't perform, they'll kick you out. So I think that is a kind of great, I think, thinking.
No, that's lovely.
I never thought of that specific analogy, but and just keep going, right? We actually have a saying at Tenzing, like chipping away. I don't expect it to come overnight. I still see that so many times. I spoke to a friend of mine the other day. It's like, we're going to launch a drinks company. We want to sell it to Coke. That's how we started. I was like, it's not going to happen. Just like but just don't even think about that now. And then we want to get the 4 million funding, and then we want to get this, and I'm like, okay, that's not, just start the climb. We always say just chipping away. That's our saying. It's like, get that extra buyer on Amazon, get that extra review, get that one extra store in, and it's a long journey. And I think that's, and enjoy that journey as well. I know it's really a naff thing to say, but it is so important, right? Like, kind of aim high. That's what we do. We do think, we're literally always say, the future of energy is plant-based, low calorie, and sustainable. Who's not going to agree with that, right? But to take it there it's going to be a long journey, and we're all happy to take it, and we're not expected to be bought or anything like that. So I think that's just kind of just aim high, but really enjoy what you're doing.
I think 100% there's kind of two things I want to build on that. And the first is like, I literally write down, I've moved house now, but I used to have the things like, how will you have fun today? And it's like a rhetorical question I'd ask myself, because it's so easy in the climb, if you want to call it this. I think this is kind of central theme here, is to get so fixated on the end point and not enjoy the struggle, not enjoy the chipping away, not enjoying the camaraderie that comes with it, with whether entrepreneurship or literally climbing Everest. So I think, and that's something I'm very bad of. And I think every challenger brand I know is forcing yourself to remember to have fun, because that reason we're doing this is to have fun.
And I'm actually I think I've become quite good at it. I think because if you say, what is that endpoint? Like, if you really imagine that endpoint, like, what is it and why is it so great, right? Yeah, money, or, and then what? That's what if I'd be like, I wouldn't also consider myself this massive serial entrepreneur. I think that also helps. I love this project that I'm doing. I want to create, like I've set ourselves this like dedication. I want to be the world's most sustainable brand. That's kind of a cool thing to like work on. And if I think if I would then sell, I'm not going to just all of a sudden start a new business. I wouldn't know what to do, or I know this market. I like this market. It's fun. It's a lot of, and I work with great people. I wouldn't want that. That doesn't sound very appealing to me. If you really think that end goal through, I think that's also a good way to kind of enjoy the moment more.
And is that, how do you kind of instill that into your team now? Like, it's actually, especially when it's all over, you're now in Amsterdam, your team's in London. Like, how do you instill fun when people are moving more remotely, I suppose, or teams are moving more remotely?
Yeah, and the question is exactly. It's a good question. I think like what is fun like in your work, and I think that's kind of where it starts. And for me, I remember. So when I wanted to start my own business, I was like, if it was for two main reasons. One was I wanted to start for myself. And that was like kind of a deep feeling I had at the time, for multiple reasons. But the main thing is that I don't like bosses as a principle. And it's not because I haven't had great ones. I've had really good ones, but someone controlling what you do, checking what you do, kind of assumes that you're not like a responsible human being. So that's then why hierarchy is put in place. So I thought I want to have my own. I want to show what I'm made of. Like, again, I always think I was quite high up at Redbull, but if I wouldn't have been at Redbull, it would have still been successful business, right? So then someone else would have taken my place, and hopefully I did some good things. But but I thought, okay, if you start yourself, you really show what you can do, and it shows more of your flaws and your good things, and that kind of increases your own development. So that's what I really loved. And then I thought, okay, well, but if I start my own business and I don't have a boss anymore, then I'll be the only one who benefits here. So from the beginning, we've said we have a real strict non-hierarchy business. And so what that means, and it's quite interesting because it's quite difficult. We've gone a lot of ups and downs over the past. When we grew in team, we were like 16 at one point, pre-corona, 16 full-time, 25 part-time. But one of the key things we do is like, we had to rethink the whole model. So what we've put in place about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, which works really well, is that you choose your own coach. So you come into the company and you get assigned one for the first 3 months, and after 3 months, you choose your own coach, which has the kind of a boss type role. In that sense, that he coaches you or she coaches you and helps you with your commitments, right? He or she does say, hey, you wouldn't, where are you with your commitments? So we don't call them targets, we call them commitments. I think wording is very important there.
Massively.
But you can choose a different coach at the end of the year, and your salary is not defined by that coach. Your salary is defined by we have these leadership skills with 4, and you get rated by the whole team. Everyone does, including myself, on these things, and together with your commitments. And your commitments are then defined by yourself, but kind of checked by yourself and your coach. So you and your coach at the end of the year go, yeah, I achieved, let's say 80% of them or 120% of them. And that then combines into your salary. So you don't have a boss telling you what salary you'll get. And if you don't like your coach, you can fire him and get a new one. But I think that's That's the cool thing as well. Like, so someone gets chosen as a coach, they get really, happy. So it's like, I then call them up and like, yeah, because then I used to do that first bit and I said, hey, after 3 months, I'm doing this now because I called them now. Normally that would be live.
Yeah. Of course.
But you go like, hey, who do you want as your coach? And they said, well, so we had Jake was our newest member of the team. And he said, I want Jack as my coach because I think, for multiple reasons, I think he's amazing. I think, well, great choice. And then I called Jack and said, we've got great news. You've just been chosen, So I think that's and then someone's really happy as opposed to you're his boss now. And, so we've got all these systems in place. So I think that's where, first of all, I think happiness starts. For me, is like having your own responsibility and being responsible for your own things. And that's where kind of leadership starts. And I think that kind of then moves into happiness. At the end of the day, you'll be more fulfilled because no one's checking what you do. And funny enough, we already had that system in place when Corona hit and we all had to work remotely. Actually, we were set up perfectly because I wasn't like a boss type person checking if everyone put their hours in. So if you're that kind of manager, you probably suffered significantly but we were actually thriving in Corona, in the beginning. So I think that's one of the things. And then there's the other things. We go on a lot of, we're skiing, we do try a lot of adventures. We're going like, when it's possible, we're going to go cycling in Scotland again in June. So when we get together, we don't just want to come together in a pub. We want to go on a proper cycle trip in Scotland. So we do like a lot of cool stuff to kind of get that team bonding as well.
It's amazing. You're almost building like individual entrepreneurs within like a startup, and that's why I love this podcast, because I get to explore these things that I've never really thought about. And in many ways, it's kind of how we've done it at Money Life, not under the same kind of ilk of like coach or commitments, but I very much kind of do things on my own time. I have Lou, who's my coach and mentor, and I hadn't thought about it yet, but when it came to lockdown, it was so simple for us to just if anything, we moved faster because we didn't we were the hierarchy was kind of way flatter, if you want to call it that. And I think the irony is that the hierarchy, when it's like that, the mountain, the actual way to climb it is when it's much flatter.
Exactly.
Which is
has, like you said, each has their own mountain to climb, but you get help and you get like, by each other. But I think the main thing is like, you want to be, if you cage someone in, if you tell them what to do, and there is elements of that, right? So like, from a brand perspective, like, how the can looks, or, that I sign that off. So it's not like it's just a free for all, right? So we have specific areas that, have sign off abilities. And we've kept that quite loose now. We don't want to kind of go, but someone like Emily that, she was like last year, like she called me and go like, we actually want to look at PR agency. I think we should do, relook at it. And I was like, oh, I think that might be a good idea. I really know. And then she'd already kind of pitched 3, like, so I was like, oh, you've done that already. Okay, brilliant.
Amazing. Yeah.
Go ahead with it. And then just see where your kind of, your bits lie, your bound like, and then say, okay, well, I really want to, co-decide on that. But mostly, to be honest, if I think the work's great, I'd rather not, right? I've got enough to do. So if everyone just gets their stuff done and it's great quality, then great,
Happy days, yeah. Want to continue on the kind of the mountain theme, because lots of listeners who kind of message me on WhatsApp, we've got this hungry WhatsApp group, that a lot of them talk about setbacks or just feeling like I'm burnt out or it's too hard. What has, in your climb up the kind of the mountain per se, what's been the single hardest moment throughout Tenzing when you've, excuse my language, just kind of thought, fuck this, and like I don't know if I can keep going, I don't know if I can keep doing that, and in that moment, like, how did you push through?
So I think there was 2, like one, but I'll just talk about the second one was just the overall beginning, right? I think you'll recognize this, where people, especially from, to be honest, also from myself, because, having quite a big job with an assistant, like you get a meeting with anyone, if I went in a meeting with the head of Sky Sports, that, I'd meet them within a week or 2 weeks, whatever. And now I couldn't even get a meeting with, the assistant buying manager of Superdrug. It's just like, it's impossible to, if I'd get an out of office, I'd be happy, because usually there would be another email, another phone number I could then also, contact. So just that sheer of, and it's not just like, it's not that it's horrible to chase or anything. It's just the constant worry that, did I do the right thing? Will this work? Because every shutdown, every no you get, that worry gets bigger. So that was one thing, but that was like over like extended period of, let's say, I'd say 2 years.
And how would you get, like, how did you start getting through to buyers? Was it just relentless persistence, or did you have like a good one-liner?
Yeah,
or like
there is, I mean, there is a bit of that, although what I was just saying. So like, for instance, Tesco was one of our big breakthroughs, and her name was, Catherine, and she's the buyer. And I still have a great relationship with her. She's still the buyer. And it was really cool because I just had my partner in the business who does all our sales, Pim, and he was just going to start, but he hadn't started yet. So I thought I'd give him a call, and my background is not sales. So I was like, Tesco, I had Redbull that always be like, oh, Tesco, they're so scary and they're really so nasty. But I went in there like, well, I'm just I love what I do. I love the product. And I remember she drank it. It was like one of those innovation days where you get like 15 minutes. And she drank it and she goes, oh, this is good. I could drink this. And I was like, wow. I was like so happy. She said that. And then I said something like, so we're in? And she goes, I think, something along those lines, like, I don't know what she exactly said. I remember she said, I could drink this, but then I think it looked very positive. So I walked out of the meeting, called Pim, and I said, we're in. And he goes, no, it can't be. Like, I think so. It took another like half a year to get there. So I think you also need those breaks, right? If that would have just been someone, because as taste is something quite subjective, and we've got a lot less sugar in there. So some people go like, oh, I think it tastes like, it doesn't have that sweet bite that I expect from a soft drink. But she loved it, so for instance, at Whole Foods, there was one buyer who hated the taste. The buyer changed, and the buyer loved the taste, and then we were in. So it is a bit about that persistence and just keep on going. So that just kind of got us through. And I think also one of the key learnings there, and I think everyone should know that, because I think that is there's a lot of tips that you shouldn't take on board, but I think this is a key one: make it successful in small areas. So we were. Make it a success in one store if need be, so we were in, for instance, Planet Organic was one of the first to take it on, and we just sampled there a lot, and we were the best selling drink at Planet Organic at that time. It's still one of the best selling drinks now. So we just made it the best selling drink, and then you can go to Whole Foods, say, hey, we're the best selling drink at Planet Organic. So that principle of making it a success in a small amount of stores, showing that it has legs, I think is really crucial.
For sure. Yeah. I think, and that's what the mistake we made at Manny Life at the beginning was, trying to do way too much at once. Kind of, I'll probably, people listening to this will get bored of me saying, but my kind of mantra is do less better, is like narrow and deep, focus, get one going, get that, once that's up and running, then you've got a case study, etc., etc., etc.
That's exactly the reason why we started with one SKU as well. We had one product in Planet Organic in the beginning and just sample, and get it going. Yeah, but the second one, I was like, the one that was probably to a deeper, like when Corona hit. Although I said just now that as a team we went really well. For me personally, that was really tough because I just about 5 years in, worked our asses off to get to that point, and then all of a sudden, you just at the end, like a year ago now, you just don't know what's going to happen. So about half we were doing really well in offices, universities, gyms, all those places obviously shut down overnight, so we just lost half the stores we were in, and I was like, how long it's going to take. We had to put people on furlough. We had 25 part-time staff that were called the Zing team that sampled. We could no longer sample, so we had to let them go. So I was really like, oh my god, like this is coming to an end. And funny enough, I'm a big runner, and I, especially since I started my business, started running a lot. Also, just keep myself, sane and healthy in my mind of stuff if it's tough. But then, funny enough, I always run next to the Thames, and there was a sign up somewhere. Put a sign over their balcony which said, thank you all our essential workers. And somehow, because I was already down, I always run past the sign, and it would get me down even more, because I was like, I'm not an essential worker. I don't feel essential at all anymore. Like, and then at that moment, after I ran past that sign a couple of times, I thought, because we'd always had sustainability in our mission. We've always said right from the beginning, the future of energy is plant-based, low-calorie, sustainable, and we did all these projects right from the start. But then we thought, okay, we've halved our business, but we're going to double down on our environmental mission, and that was actually the way to keep myself really inspired by Tenzing and the whole team. And then Emily played a huge part of that. We became the first energy drink or first soft drink worldwide to carbon label their product. So we did their whole carbon label footprint from crop to can. We're now the first carbon negative energy drink in the world, and still the only on both. We're the only soft drink, only carbon negative energy drink. We're the first to get the Climate Pledge Friendly badge on Amazon. So we've really been leading the way in the whole sustainability side. And I think, funny enough, and I know this sounds like people will not believe, but we actually did. I thought it wouldn't give us any extra business, because I actually noticed before, the whole Volkswagen scandal happened, and Volkswagen became the biggest car manufacturer like a year later. Like, how much do people really care about this? But we've actually found, since we've gone for this, which we just did for ourselves, we actually get a lot of traction, and mainly from customers actually. People like Shell have just reached out to us, and people actually reaching out to us for the first time. Because they also want to work with us because of this kind of our mission. So I think that was a real beautiful moment of like my deepest low, that at the time still felt very deep, and like we crawled back out of it by that whole purpose thing. Which I've always been like, but it does work. Like, if you actually feel like this is why I'm doing it, it does help, and it helps mainly in the darkest days, because I think purpose is like an overused word. And when you're in your day-to-day, like when I'm talking to you now, I'm not thinking about my purpose. Or when you're like grinding away and like calling customers, you're not thinking about your purpose, but actually it's there to help you through the dark times. And it's there to help get talent on board. I found that as well. You get the best people that want to work for you as well.
One thing I want to kind of jump in there is, obviously you've worked for the big corporations in Redbull and MTV, etc. And I think a lot of what you were saying there about sustainability is that sometimes when it's the big brands, the big juggernaut, big multinational brands, it doesn't come across as authentic. Whereas what I read, the report Emily sent through, I thought was brilliant. I can put a link at the end of the show, actually, if anyone wants to kind of read it. Tenzing Sustainability kind of pledge, I think is what it is. But what advice, if we are, every brand needs to be more sustainable now, like mandatory, but how do you do that in an authentic way? Because that's something I think you're doing really well outside looking in.
Yes, I think there's two things which help. Like, if we did it right from the beginning. So we said immediately those three things, like I said, plant-based, low-calorie, sustainable. And we had our 5% pledge at the time, where we get 5% of our profits to environmental, causes. So the first thing, really cool, because again, like you said, I, went to Jumling to Everest, before I started the Tenzing business, got his sign off, got my whole family to end up meeting their whole family in San Francisco, funny enough, to get everyone to get again, they became partners in the business. And then I called him and I said, because obviously, especially at the time, it was getting quite a lot of press that the route up to Everest was quite littered. And so I said, is there anything we can help there? And I want to do maybe there's cleaning, go with the team, probably because I wanted to go again and clean up Everest. But he says that doesn't work. What we need is bins. So they have those kind of oil barrel bins that would fall over and scatter over the mountains. So we built these stone bins. That's how we started. I mean, it wasn't very sexy. I don't think we got any press off it, but we just built bins. We built, it didn't sound, but it worked. And we've been doing that ever since and growing that commitment to them. The other thing then we did was the clean air tracker. I don't know if you heard of that. So it's I was also, again, it's also from, I think, what, if you think about it, why is it authentic? Because it is authentic. Maybe that's just the answer. Because with the clean air tracker, again, I said, I'm a big runner. I run a lot. And then I read a newspaper. If you run in London, you might as well not run more often than not, because the smog negates the positive effects of running. So I'm like, oh my God, this is that bad. And it was an article that was the data within King's College. And we actually worked with King's College. We were sold there. So we got in touch with them and said, you've got all this data, but how many people know this? And we met them, and then we made an app that pulls their data, live data, and puts it on Strava. So if you're running through London, downloaded the Tenzing Clean Air Tracker app, you can then see your live data on the clean air. So you said the Tenzing Clean Air score is 82 or it's 41. It's really like, it's bad. And that is just like a tool that is genuinely helpful for me when I'm running, but for everyone else. So it's just, I think, and again, the being carbon neutral was because we wanted to feel essential at the team Tenzing when we're all feeling very low. So I think that is probably the difference with bigger companies that are just thinking, how can we sell more cans? Well, let's do that, and maybe they'll like it. Well, actually, with us, it was genuine projects where we actually asked Jumling, what can we do to help? Or we thought, what can we do better for running? Or,
you're scratching your own itch essentially, but you're doing it in a sustainable way. And when you do that, there's no, you can't fake authenticity. And as you say, you're literally using that to run, then it's going to stem from within, and people can, because I think people have got a very good bullshit detector now, and they can see through it, if that makes sense. So I think what you're doing is, what would you, where is like your favorite clean run in London? This is kind of a personal question.
Well, mine was the Thames. So
really?
I was in the Chiswick area, and I'd go run to Richmond. Beautiful run. I mean, very, very, I mean, you got the Thames, or if you're running down to Richmond, you got the Thames on the right, like this forest, I think there's a golf course next to it, but it seems like you're in a forest on the left, Thames on the right. It's just astonishing. You're not in central London, but you're pretty close. So it's like, oh my God, this is in London. It's a beautiful run. I think everything I think the Thames is such a beautiful, I mean, where you're at Fulham, there's great runs by the Thames. I think, anything that's close to nature, funny enough, is also more inspiring to run in and tends to be also cleaner. I think that's what the app shows. Every like 2-3 meters you put between yourself and a road already helps your runs. So yeah, that would be my favorite one for sure.
Get to the Thames then. I'll make a note of that.
And even you could like take the tube. I was thinking like take the tube, run there and take the tube, or run back, So little things
I hadn't thought about that. No, that's get closer to because I looked at trying to do Hyde Park the other day, but it's like it was just three miles to get there. So I'm going to be absolutely bamboozled by the time I get there. If that's brilliant, get the tube.
Yeah, run back. Yeah.
So kind of want to move into kind of the next part of this conversation. And I think you've teed it up nicely there with talking about like the authentic sustainability angle. And I forgot to say in the introduction, but you're also an author of a book called The Social Brand. And there's a video I watched on YouTube, which I thought was just brilliant, the way you kind of succinctly put it. And it's all about how brands have a brand bank account essentially. And we should be giving more than we should be kind of taking. Give more than you take is kind of what I took from it, and I thought was really, really great. Now lots of listeners will be kind of listening to this saying we don't have the budget to give, or we're super early stage. How did you kind of have that how did you give at the beginning, and less about kind of the carbon angle? How did you give when you didn't have a budget, and how could listeners like learn from that, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a good one. So I think just to kind of explain it a bit. So the premise actually is really kind of black and white. I put it in like, so taking marketing then is right. Even though we do that ourselves, Tenzing does it as well. It's like we like give Facebook ads, YouTube ads, TV ads. So you're not actually waiting for it to happen. Like you don't want an ad to come by. It can still be a good ad and it can be very effective. But I believe that the true kind of brand love you create is by giving something to people that is of value. And actually the Clean Air running app is a great example of that. It actually offers you obviously clear value, right? You're running, you want to know how clean it is, and you can just download this app. And that's what I kind of mean. So is that give, and I think, and coming back to like say smaller, so like say building those bins is a clear way to give. Again, we did, I don't think it happened even because we didn't have the budget to send out a logo. But now I think if you walk past these bins on there is a little logo there, like, this is made possible by Tenzing. And again, you're like, oh, that's pretty far. We are available in Nepal, funny enough. But yeah, I do kind of always think it comes back, and there's a very little science to back that up, to be honest. And so another simple way to give, to be honest, is just sampling. I would believe, like, especially food and drink, but in any kind of business, like, how could you get your product to an end, to someone who would potentially like that product for free? So I think in the beginning, I actually, we went on Instagram quite quickly, and I was like, that's a waste. We shouldn't have done that. I think in the beginning you should be like hands-on, just sample, get the product out there. Like the same with your product, let people try it. The best possible way. So I think, and then when you grow bigger, and because the building that app did cost quite a bit of investment, still nothing compared to the big boys budgets, but I couldn't have done, and I think I shouldn't have done that in year one. I think that would have been a waste, because no one would have known Tenzing. So I think you can slowly build it up, when you grow, but I think the beginning, just get your product out there.
Yeah, and I think it's in today's kind of digital world per se, it's so easy to get bamboozled by like, oh, we've got to do this Facebook ad, or we've got to do da. But actually, like, we're in the business of food and drink. Like, let's not overcomplicate it. The proof of the pudding's in the eating. Like, just get people to try it. That should be your talisman salesman, is your product, essentially. Like, and just do that. I think that's
and we always hear about these brands, like, what is it now on TikTok that's doing so well, the mochi or something, and then you think, oh, we should get a TikTok campaign, but those get a lot of press, and hopefully for them it will work, and maybe it does, don't know. But I think in the beginning it'll just cost you too much headspace to think about that, because then you got all your social media platforms. You want to create content for TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Well, if you just get your product out there, that's something I did that. I already did that a bit, but I could have done that more looking back. We had a really cool, we got our Tenzing handle on Instagram, so we should have just claimed it, put one picture up of our product and said, look, we'll be back once we can breathe again, or we're chipping away in the actual market, or something like that. Please tag us if you like us, something like that.
How do you, because it's an interesting one, how do you create enough headspace? I think that's really another important thing that lots of listeners, and I know I go through it a lot with Money Life, is you can sometimes feel like you're chipping away, which I think is absolutely you've got to do. You've got to keep chipping, but sometimes you think, oh my god, like there's literally too much on my plate. Like, how do you manage that with working remotely, etc., etc.?
Yeah, so funny enough, after a lot of years of work, I've actually for the first time discovered the to-do list. So I'm gonna stick with the very simplest tool.
Nice. Yeah.
And so I used to never have it, like, because I'm always like, one of my bad brain things is I say to myself, look, I'm not a boring guy. I don't stick to convention, so I would never make a to-do list, because I just had this kind of, and because if you're at the office, there's so much you can do that you don't need to do, because it's very reactive work. And I think when you start your own business, and also especially when it's remote in your office, in your own, it's like 90% proactive, and then you hear how much, then you actually start to value the reactiveness of other jobs, because I think it's quite nice just to react to people all the time. But if you have to start every conversation, start every initiative, that's a lot more tiring. So I have a beautiful little list I make every morning, and I make sure. And I think one of the cool things I've done, because I had this coach, and he said, make it at the end of the day, make your gratitude list, right? Which is a very, quite popular, a motivational tool that I think can help. But I noticed I could never stick to it, after 2 weeks of writing what I was grateful for that day. And they tended to be quite samey, spend some time with the kids. So then I'd actually turn that around and put that on my to-do list. So I put it on my to-do list. I put, everything from literally, I always start tidy room. That's always my first thing. And then it's do this, and I write all the nitty gritty stuff on there. Even bring some, because I know my daughter likes that, bring some tea to my daughter, or, and then I've done that. And then, and when I even put stuff on. So if I do something that I haven't put on, I put it on, and then, tick it off. Just a sense of, I'm actually achieving things, however small, to kind of keep going. And I think then I look at the list at the end of the day. So it's kind of a reverse. What am I grateful for? It's like, wow, what have I, I'm grateful for all these things I've done, and I've actually done them. So that's worked really well for me. And to be honest, the kind of basic stuff around running, exercise, trying to get enough sleep. I'm a very bad sleeper. So, so I do that. I've actually discovered that Wim Hof breathing recently. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's 11 minutes. I swear by it. I've done it for about a year now, every evening. and it really helps me with my sleep. So I've never really got into meditation. I tried it, but it just didn't work for me. I couldn't like sit still and think of nothing. And I tried all the different strategies and all the different I read all the books, but I couldn't do it. Couldn't get myself motivated for a longer period. And then I discovered this. Someone recommended it to me, and it's 11 minutes. And it's like you have to breathe really deep and have your 3 breath holds. And because it's like a meditation, but it's like because you're active during it, and you've got these 1.5 minute breath holds. I don't know. I love them.
Do you do the cold showers? Because Wim, just for listeners, Wim Hof's the proponent of like cold showers and using ice as kind of. So you do that in the morning?
Yes. Yeah. And what? So I have this coach who kind of, and you notice it. What a cold shower? Because again, it sounds like one of those naff things, right? Oh yeah, everyone like entrepreneurs take a cold shower in the morning. That's going to change your life. But I think what it does do, just for that, even how long I do it for about a minute. You cannot think about anything else. So you essentially are in your body, right? So the worst thing for anyone, and we all do that all the time, is like we're only thinking. And like to be in your body is a great way to kind of say you're not thinking and you're just like, you're listening to your breath and to just be in the moment. And it's really hard if you're under an ice cold shower to think about what you're worried about, So that's the secret. That's the beauty of it. You go into your body for that second. And in the beginning, you start to kind of like, move around. I do that every morning, even try and like dodge it a bit by doing this. And then after a while, I just stand still and let it come over me. And it's lovely. And so I start every morning with a cold shower. I usually try and get a run in before the run or a cycle. I actually bring the kids to school. Then so they've got a 10K cycle, typical Dutch style. They're 12, but they cycle twins. They cycle 10K to school. Then I cycle them back. So as long as they'll have me, they're still not ashamed of having their dad cycle with them. So as long as they'll have me, I'll cycle with them. So that's like beautiful. Again, that's what things I do to keep myself sane. Like, because it's spending quality time with my kids. But then I do get a 20K cycle in every morning, and then I have my little cold shower, my little to-do list, and that's how I try to keep myself.
Yeah, I love that. It's almost, I've written down here, it's like a reverse gratitude list. And I've never thought of doing it that way. Of take it, and but as you say, it's the little things, because fundamentally gratitude is it's the little things. And if you write as you go in a very methodical way, you look at it in the day like, oh god, that's I think I need to probably take on board, because I'm just like charge into things. And then you said you've got a business coach. Is that like, why is that? Why have you got a business coach? Because in my eyes,
he's not a business coach. He's just a personal coach.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Who I've known for a long time, and I think is amazing. And like, when I was struggling, for instance, actually, when I was in my deepest time in that Corona time, I was just explaining, it was really like, I wasn't great. I literally couldn't sleep. I get into these massive insomnia bursts then of like,
same here.
Yeah. And it's like, as you know, not getting sleep is, not even Tenzing can help.
But you never know.
Well, I did. It works a bit, but like, it's obviously not good to kind of not sleep for a long period. And then I think that's what I'm good at. I realize when I'm not doing well, and I seek help. And I think obviously that other people, that's one of the key things that everyone says, which I totally agree. Like, just seek help, kind of. And I called him. I hadn't actually spoken to him in a while, about 2 years or something. I actually started again with him in another course. But immediately we did this 4-day session, or actually only 3-hour sessions, and he introduced me to the Wim Hof stuff as well. And what is nice, he introduced me to all kind of ways to cope, and that's what I love about it. Like, so if people are listening to this and they try the Wim Hof and it really doesn't work for them, that's like totally fine. I think the key is to find something that works for you. Some people could go with meditation and really love it. So I think there's definitely not a one size fits all at all, and don't try like stick with it for a while, stick with it long enough. Like, so if you go listen to this, do Wim Hof, try to do Wim Hof for like, if you have trouble sleeping, every night for a week. And I actually very soon just kind of needed it. While I've had loads of other stuff that I've tried for ages. I went Tai Chi for like years and I never got into it. I actually really thought, well, geez, why did I want to stick to that? So it's really like finding something that suits you.
I think, and I'm a proponent of meditation as well. Actually, it's kind of weird. We've had a similar year by the sounds of things. I did it, started in 2016, like 10, 15 minutes every day. And I find it kind of the same as you with the Wim Hof. I do it first thing I used to do kind of the guided meditation, then it got to the point where I could literally just do it silent. And I find it gives me that kind of, you get out of your head. But then I don't have any idea why, but as soon as lockdown happened last year, I just started drinking and like just started drinking basically, and threw meditation out the window. And it was kind of, to be completely blunt, it was 6 or 7 kind of weird months of like, this isn't great at all. And then in kind of October last year, I reintroduced it back in, and it's just the sleep. And I think you've got to, but as you say, there's like, people get so in fixed if something works for them that they need to shout about it and it must work for you. Like, no, I think being okay with it, like working out and finding your own kind of thing, but you've got to do something to create that headspace if you're
exactly. And I think the interesting thing as well, what you're saying is like, very often what I also do is like, say that you stopped meditating, started drinking for a specific reason, probably like, you're worried about your business or, Corona, or everything was getting to you. And then we try and solve that reason very often in our minds, and that's why our minds are just shooting all over the place. But I think having some things in place could be as simple as running every now and then, yoga, whatever. Really, that could people don't realize, I think, enough that can really help with that. You don't. There's very most likely you can't solve that thing. You can maybe try, go for it and maybe let it go, but actually having these other tools in place can help you deal with that way better.
But just conscious of I want to kind of go to some quick fire questions now, because I'm conscious of your time. Now, I believe we learn at the cross section of things. So it's like different industries, different cultures. At that intersection is when real learning happens, in my opinion. So look, whether it's books, just read loads and you'll sort of piece it together. You obviously had a career in MTV and Red Bull. You're an author, you're a founder of that stock business, which name's going to struggle with here. But what would you say is like kind of the biggest lessons you've taken from say Red Bull and MTV that have set you up for success at Tenzing?
God. I think one of the key things I've learned, I remember learning that was a long time ago, and I don't even know which company I was, but that was one of those that, I love strategic thinking. I think I'm quite good at it to think, okay, we should go over, that way. And I think good strategy is important, but I think putting the team in place to make that, you can't just have a strategy, communicate that strategy to everyone and then hope it happens. I think, having your organization or the amount of the people you have in the team drive that, of course. So I think that I know it's quite a, I don't know, it's quite a vague one, but I think that's one of the key things I've learned, that putting a right team in place is just crucial, and like motivating and like having a great team. Because I think I remember, I had that classic career where I had like one person in my team, 2 people in my team, whatever, when at Red Bull at like 120 at the end. And I think after I think when you have your when you had your first person, you see, I can still compensate for this person, but then there's 2 people and there's no way I can compensate. They're in their own individuals. And, if they perform really well, I'll perform really well. So I think that's the kind of moment I also realized, like, we have to, everyone has to pull their weight, be amazing what they do. So I think, the importance of team is always, has slowly grown.
And how do you communicate that the Tenzing strategy with sustainability to the team? Is it like on a weekly basis, to get specific? Is it, you have calls? How do you align the teams? That's one of the, I suppose, challenges we're going through now. Is at the beginning of lockdown, we were 5, now we're coming up to 11, I think it is, but with more coming in. But it's one of the things Stu's doing a great job of, but it's how do you communicate the strategy and the mission to the team at Tenzing?
Yeah, we've got to really fix. So one of the things I've always hated was that Monday morning meeting. Again, through my whole working life, I've never been in a good one. So it was like, so at one point when we were in the base camp, that's what we called our our office in London. We just did 10 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes of cleaning up the office. And that was it. That was our Monday morning meeting. So we started the office, the week with a clean office and a clear mind. because there's many more people want to share what they've been doing, and then one person talks way too long and 30 minutes have gone and then you've learned nothing. And then we did that again when we were in lockdown. We also, we were only like 7 at that point, but now we're back to 12 again. And with 7 you can still do like a weekly catch up, but like 12 it's just too many. So we literally do a Monday morning Zoom, and all we do there is if there's something to share, I share it. We just ask if anyone has anything to share that's important, and we leave it there. So they always are less long than 30 minutes, preferably even like 20. And then, so it's just kind of, we all get together, we share, and then we have longer monthly meetings and even longer quarterly meetings. The quarters are the most important for us. And then we kind of go, do we need a strategy adjustment? Then everyone puts their quarterly commitments in place. What are you going to go for the next quarter? We sign those commitments off as a team. So I think those quarterly meetings are crucial. And then you can really, that's also, I think a quarter for us, for our kind of business, is really good, where you can see, okay, let's say we really need to focus on our rates of sale now, for instance, in a certain retailer. And then, so you don't want to change that per week or even per month, but you want to maybe push that in a quarter, or we need to get more awareness there or whatever. So, I think we're small enough and agile enough to change. We could potentially change your whole strategy. I mean, not the underlying strategy, but, the kind of, what needs to be done in a quarter. So I think there's quarterly, and it's just I think it's a nice, time frame. You can get a lot done in a quarter. And
it's that
really cool.
It's that chipping thing, isn't it? We were talking about at the beginning. It's like a quarter's a nice chip, if you want to call it that. It's exactly. A good old chip. It gives you enough time, but it's fast as well.
Yeah, totally. And Emily had a really cool one in the team. She said, over the last quarter's just been, that meme on LinkedIn and everywhere, this is how I started, this is where I am. We asked everyone to do that. And then it was really cool was to see what you achieved in a quarter. So for instance, she's like our head of sustainability. She said, we had our 5% pledge, we had our app, we had our clean air running app, we were building our bins. But that's where I was. And 3 months later, we're carbon negative, we're carbon labeling. We work with, Imperial College, Carbon Cloud, Ecology, Planet Mark, 6 or 7 different amazing partners. So that really gives everyone a sense wow, this is what I've achieved in 3 months. And that's the kind of sense, because that's also the disadvantage of chipping away, that you don't see what you achieved. So that's what we also use the quarterly meetings for.
I love that. Yeah, no, because that's something I'm not good at, is stopping and saying, oh, look, you have actually done this and you have achieved this. That's genius. I really like that. Yeah. I think it's
once a quarter is more than enough. Even the once a month we do. I think the once a month we try even to stick in an hour, so once a week, 20 minutes, once a month, hour and a half, and once a quarter, we even do not even a day. The quarterly things 3-4 hours, I think. No, we did do a day. We did do a whole day, but then over the Zoom, but we did an ice bath all together. We did a Wim Hof thing. Then we went all for a run together and looked and checked on Strava. So we made it a fun day as well. But we did get all that stuff done.
Amazing. Kind of next question is, I've got a Hungry broadcast WhatsApp group, and it's all the listeners, essentially, or our top kind of listeners who are really evangelize the podcast, I suppose. And I said you were coming on. I said, look, if you got any questions for Huib. And one of my friends, Ollie at Broma Foods, they're a raw chocolate brand, and he said one of the issues he's got as a founder is that they're a new brand. There's almost an infinite number of, there's quite a few USPs you can really push with when you're trying to market your product. How do you know which is the right one to go with? And I think for him it was, and how do you know which one is landing with the consumer? And what's your kind of silver bullet? Could you speak to that?
It's a very good question. Well, the first thing I would say is that, that question is one of the most relevant questions, because 2 things it encapsulates. First is, what is your key point of differentiation and what makes you different? And is that differentiation relevant, right? That's the holy grail, because a lot of people just say, well, I'm just launching chocolate. You have to have something in even, your differentiation could even be in the kind of packaging you have, or, whatever. But I think, what's your differentiation, and is that differentiation relevant? And then thirdly, single-mindedly focusing on that. And I think that's where a lot of people, including myself, fall short, where you just go like, oh yeah, but we're also this and we're also this. And for us, kind of saying, the future of energy is plant-based, low calorie, and sustainable. I know and if you say, I know there are three, but if we had to choose, we go with plant-based. So it's quite funny because so now we're working on a little bit of advertising campaign, and then we got 6 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. And then it forces you to kind of like, what's the key message? So our key message has always been like natural energy purely from plants. Nice. That's our kind of, payoff. It's as simple as that. But if you have a bit more time, we all say it's low calorie sustainable, and I think they don't bite each other as such, because as total, they don't confuse, I believe, because it kind of gives you, if you hear that, it's like the more positive choice of energy, right? So I think, but it's very, very cheap. You can go, we work with Populous. I think first thing, just talk with friends. I always, the whole bit of I always say it's one of the things I say in my book, you have to be able to tell your product in a tweet. Like if I see that my one tweet is smaller than a tweet, it's a one line, I can put it on I'm not going to say it again, but I've said it so many times. But it should be that simple. So you should have a real simple thing. What is it? And that sentence that I said, plant-based, low calorie, sustainable, all the other energy drinks are not that. So they're all artificial, high calorie, and not sustainable, right? So it's not only like that's the future, it's also like those that makes us totally different than the others. And is it relevant? Well, yeah, I guess people want to kind of know what they put in their body. They don't want a lot of calories, and they more and more are looking for brands that have a sustainable agenda. So I guess it's like it's trial and error, talking to people. You could test it with a bigger group. You test different headlines. So I think with Populous, literally for a couple of £100, you could test 5-6 different headlines and see,
Yeah, I think one of the things I wrote about probably about 6-7 months ago was this thing called the brand bubble. And I think when you're kind of getting loads of people send us messages, probably the same with you at Tenzing, it's like, oh my God, your product's amazing. And it kind of gets you in this brand bubble where you get almost confused by your own success, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
And I think it's so important. Yeah, so important to get out of that brand bubble, be humble and just speak to the customer and say, why are you buying this, or why are you not buying this? And then use that to kind of reinforce.
Yeah, exactly. So you just talk to a lot of people, and then I would go test, just test, because we were then also, I think that's some consistency. So we've always said right from the beginning, so natural energy purely from plants. Nice. That's been our it's not even a payoff, it's just like what we are. But then we were thinking, is it powerful enough? So then we said, well, pure plant power. We said Tenzing, pure plant power. And then the good thing is we tested that. We put it on our can. It's really easy to kind of mock that up. We put it on a little campaign. We tested it and actually didn't do as well as natural energy purely from plants, even on energy. But if we thought it would score better on energy, but it didn't score as well on energy even. So that kind of does help you, because our minds tend to be inclined to try new things all the time, especially I think if you're an entrepreneur. So that kind of helps you to no, they actually still like this old one. And that's one of my old bosses used to say. It was quite an inspiring guy, and I think it's a great quote. He says, when we get bored of it, so you remember there was that was when I was the head of Europe, Redbull. And we'd get all these countries presenting to each other, and he was like, yeah, no, we're going to stop that now because people are bored of it, that specific activation. He goes, when we get bored of it, that's probably the first time that someone out there in your market will see it. And I think that's such a good little nugget, because it's so true, because we are in this bubble. Just listen, people have had it now with natural energy purely from plants. No one's even seen it yet.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of my next question was going to be, if you could sum up what makes great food and drink marketing in one sentence, what would it be?
Well, the good thing is put it in one sentence.
Yeah.
and then repeat. I mean, think of, what's the biggest success, Fever Tree, right? A great little payoff. The 3/4 of your drink is a tonic, so you might as well mix it with the best. That is a long headline. Like, that is a long payoff that no one, like, everyone's like, Honda, the power of dreams, or just do it, or it gives you wings. They literally had a whole sentence, but it totally made sense. It's as if those founders came it up with themselves, which maybe they did. And just repeat it. In the underground, when you saw that one poster and then it always said our founder took this picture in Congo himself or something, and it was that picture of him in Congo with that, fever tree on it or whatever, and that payoff. And I think they just had that for like 10 years. So it's bold not to change. It's super bold to go, keep it simple, don't change a thing, but not a lot of people do that.
And are there any books that listeners could go and read to kind of to add to their toolkit to help with that, or say Ollie could go and read from Broma that you'd think are really good?
Well, I'd read The Social Brand by Huib van Boekel. It's an absolute classic.
Of course.
The only book that was written before the company was founded. I did the theory first, and then I actually, usually people fund a company and then writes a book afterwards.
Yeah, that's amazing.
No, I think, yeah, it's very hard always. I'm not very inclined to listen to, especially not to like gurus and stuff. I actually always hate all the like start with why. Absolute bullshit.
Yeah, that's literally my next question. Or my final question was going to be, because I listened saying I don't take, it's a bread and jam talk saying, I don't believe in taking anyone's advice or anything. And he talked about, 1,000 Tree fans and start with why. So let's talk about that then, because I think that's really interesting.
Because there's a lot of these things, like all of a sudden, all founders, like, because that's the cool thing about London. I think this is founder network. A lot of people know each other, help each other. And then all of a sudden you hear everyone talking, everyone repeating each other. And I heard that a lot to start with why in the first 1,000 fans. And the bad thing is, and I think that you can really, if you've loved these theories, you've got to at least do some work and find out where they came from. Right. So, and I think the start with why is obviously a speech from an advertising executive that just did a speech, and it just went viral because this guy can deliver good speeches, not because he knows what he's talking about. I'm being particularly harsh on the man, but he's never launched his own business other than his consultancy business based on this one speech. And he literally quotes Apple in there, and it goes, what's his great quote? He goes, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Really? As if someone's standing there in the front of a Tesco shelf and they're looking at the energy drinks and go, why would Huib van Boekel, the founder of this lovely energy drink, why would he be doing this? They don't even know who I am. They're just like, oh, that car looks quite nice. Hey, it says it's natural. Oh, I don't want that artificial stuff, whatever, And he goes like, and then he goes, Apple started with why. They wanted to change the world. I think he's like, I'll have to look at it again but I like, and then only after they think that it will make a computer. So what do you think they did? That Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs were like, let's change the world, let's make it a more creative, different place. Let's make things different. We could do self-help books. We could do, yoga retreats. Oh no, let's make a personal computer. That would be the way, like Steve Wozniak, which is the massive computer geek. If you hear all the stories, he just loved making a computer that was slightly more accessible to people. Like, can he make it in one machine, right? It was just a product thing. So he's just talking absolute untruths, Simon Sinek. And why I get quite worked up about it, because people follow this advice. I've had people come to me and start and pitch me their why. They don't even have a product yet. At the end of the day, look at all the what's Amazon. He didn't start with why. He just thought, oh my god, and he didn't say, we want to connect, blah blah blah. He's just like, oh my god, big great business model, whatever. And then the other one was the first 1,000, which is actually I do like the writer, because I think it was like a
it's Kevin Kelly. He's Wired.
Wired.
Yeah, he's a Wired editor, I think.
Wired editor. Yeah.
Yeah.
His theory is actually. It's simple and true. He calculated if you have 1,000 buying fans, I think in the music industry, I think that's where this theory started. 1,000 buying fans of your merchandise, of your, that you could make a living. So he just calculated the amounts of people you would need in a tech world, in a wired background, you could make a living of. It wasn't, but how the theory went on is like, start with getting your first 1,000 fans and then things will fly. But that wasn't even his theory. His theory was like, what do you need to make a living? And it's also in a digital world. So again, I didn't even know who my first 1,000 fans were. You don't know. Right? You don't, like, people that pick you up in Whole Foods and like start liking you, and you don't even. So I think that you've really got to look at who gives this advice, and you've got to test it for yourself. But there's a couple of advices that I do think do run true, that are universal. And I think if it's one, I think it's the one that all entrepreneurs learn, and that you've learned and I've learned the hard way, is that focus bit. That's the only thing I would say that isn't 100% universal true advice. Kind of focus on one area and smash it there. Because I think, like, in everyone, and the examples are endless. Like Facebook just started on, like they say, it's a fast growing company. Yes, but it just started on Harvard. You had to have a Harvard email to be on Facebook. And then if you see the really early interviews, he's like, yeah, we're going to Princeton now, I think, or Stan. And then I don't really want to do it because I can't control the group so much, and I can't like learn. So he didn't even want to go to these other universities, but it was growing so fast, he then had to kind of. And then it went from other universities to only students, so, and then a great story. I saw a great story from the founder from Deliveroo, and he started in one postcode, because that's actually very easy to do with Deliveroo, the business model. You just find stores that want to work with you, find a couple of drivers in that postcode, and then advertise in that postcode, and you made it work in that postcode, and then you added a second and a third, and then all of a sudden scale really fast. But every business that is successful started really, really small. And I think a lot of people forget that, and you see them when they're big and then try to launch something big. And I think we could have done that better. So we're, as well, in the beginning, just focus on a small group, whether that's like a specific, so if you're launching a drink, like focus on just on climbers, for instance. I think we could have done that better. We do that now a lot. We're in every climbing center. But in the beginning, we could have done that harder, for instance. So really find an area for you to focus. And I think that's nearly the only universal advice that I think is probably applicable to every new business.
I completely agree. Now, I started with family, with Jamling and Tenzing, and I want to kind of end with family, specifically your family, because I was again watching a video in this, and your father was, correct me if I'm wrong, like marketing director at Unilever, he said in this talk is that he used to give you products and try campaigns and test it with you. I was going to kind of ask, like, what is the kind of the key lesson your father has taught you from his background in marketing, I suppose?
Well, the key lesson, I think that's always interesting, because we've got we were just here today because it's his birthday.
Yeah, it's pertinent time to ask that question.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, funny enough, everything that you as a father, or from your father, you as an elder kids, because I've got a brother and a sister, you take away something else. And one of the things I just took away is that I noticed he really loved his job. So I think, that is like a really important element for me. Like, he really loved his job. He loved what he's doing. And I actually, because he kind of involved me in it, he'd come home and he'd ask me all these questions. And I actually noticed I really loved it. Well, actually, my other brother and sister, not so much. So I was actually, in that sense, quite fortunate to, see that something that he loved, and that I actually noticed I loved. And funny enough, because I started my career at Unilever as well, because I just got the job there, not obviously through him. Unilever doesn't work like that. And there was an element in me that was not wanting to work there, because I thought I'm following too much in what am I, I had all these, then all these daddy issues come up, like, am I doing it because he wants me to do it, or will this make him proud? But actually, looking back now, it was just genuinely a passion choice. So I think I was fortunate enough to kind of see, and I think that is also where my theory came from, of doing something for people that people find important and nice, as opposed to like trying to shove something down someone's throats. I think, I don't know, that was always kind of there from the beginning.
Amazing. I think we'll wrap it up there. That was absolutely awesome. Is there any way you'd like to? I'll put a link to the Tenzing sustainability
cool.
document, because I think that's really, really, really important. I think brands, all challenge brands and big brands, could learn a lot from that. Is there anywhere else people can find you or Tenzing?
So I'm quite active on LinkedIn. I like that. I love it as a platform. It's kind of the only real platform I personally use. So yeah, you can follow me on Huib van Bokkel. And the disadvantage of the name is no one can pronounce it, but it's the only one in the world. So that's the advantage.
Yeah, I think I had that issue.
Yeah, exactly. So no. So yeah, connect with me there. I get a lot of direct messages that I hardly reply to, but I do love, if people obviously, it's the way to follow the journey effectively. And I try to kind of react to kind of, direct messages. And the other one, you can get us on Amazon, like leave a review. It's still very important for every, challenger brand. So that's, and, check out our website where you can find a lot more stuff about our kind of sustainability pledge.
Amazing. Thank you so much.